Welcome back, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into today's market madness? Whew. We've got a lot to cover. Everything from the Fed maybe taking a step back to, some big CEO shakeups. And of course, we can't forget about those Bitcoin predictions. Always exciting. But first things first, just a quick reminder that we're here to share the news, not tell you what to do with your money.
Exactly. We're going to break down the headlines, share some insights, but always remember, gotta do your own research before making any investment decisions. Talk to a financial pro. That's always a good idea.
Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's dive right in. So one of the biggest stories making the rounds is about the Federal Reserve. The word on the street is they might be heading back to a more, what some are calling, boring role. What's that all about, and how should we make sense of this possible change?
It's really interesting to think about. I mean, for the past couple of decades, the Fed's been front and center.
Right.
They've had to deal with some major curveballs like the whole 2008 financial crisis and then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Their responsibilities have really grown, but now some experts, folks like former St. Louis Fed President James Bullard, are suggesting they might be, scaling back, focusing on their core duties,
Yeah.
interest rates and managing bonds, that sort of thing.
So less intervention, more sticking to the basics. Does that mean we're headed for smoother sailing, less volatility, or could it leave us a little more exposed if things go wrong?
It's a good question, and a lot of investors are trying to figure that out. It's possible a less hands-on Fed could mean fewer market swings, but then again, it also means they might not be as quick to jump in if things hit the fan.
Sounds like a bit of a trade-off then. Predictability versus having a safety net, maybe? What do you think this all means for the average investor, especially someone who's a little more cautious with their money?
I'd say for investors who really value stability, this shift might actually be seen as a positive thing. But, and this is important, you always got to remember, every investment comes with at least some risk. That's just the nature of the beast. Spreading your investments across different types of assets, diversifying your portfolio, that's always a smart move. It helps manage that risk no matter what the Fed's doing.
Makes sense, spreading the risk. Diversification, it's like the golden rule of investing, right? Especially when the market's future feels a little shaky. And speaking of shaky, there's some serious shakeups happening in the corporate world that we should talk about. First up, Stellantis. They're the folks behind some pretty big names in the auto world. Jeep, Peugeot, all those. Well, they're saying goodbye to their CEO, Carlos Tavares, and it seems pretty sudden. How's the market digesting this news, and what could it mean for Stellantis going forward?
Yeah, the news about Tavares definitely got people talking. Stellantis' stock took a bit of a hit when it was announced. Investors, I think, are a little nervous about where the company is headed, especially with all the changes happening in the auto industry right now.
It's a wild time to be in that business. Electric vehicles are taking off, supply chains are still a mess, and then you've got consumer tastes constantly shifting. This change at the top just adds another layer of, well, complication to an already pretty chaotic situation.
Yeah.
How do you see this playing out for Stellantis?
It's tough to say for sure, but one thing's clear. The new CEO's got their work cut out for them. They'll need to handle all these challenges, and they'll need to come in with a clear vision for the future. Tavares was a strong leader, no doubt about that, so there will be some big shoes to fill. How well Stellantis adapts, how well they innovate, that's going to be key to their success, I think, in the coming years.
Adapting, that's the name of the game these days. And it's not just the auto world seeing these leadership changes. Over in tech land, Intel's saying farewell to their longtime CEO, Pat Gelsinger. He's stepping down, and for now, they've got two interim CEOs sharing the reins until they find a permanent replacement. It feels a little out of the blue, wouldn't you say? What could be behind this move, and what does it mean for Intel in the, well, incredibly competitive tech world?
I mean, Intel's been facing some serious heat from competitors, companies like Taiwan Semiconductor. They've been making some big moves. This leadership change, maybe it's a sign they're about to shift gears, try a new approach to stay competitive. The new CEO, whoever they end up being, will have a big task ahead of them. They got to figure out how to put Intel back on top when it comes to chip manufacturing. It's a tough market out there.
It'll be interesting to see what direction they take, that's for sure. This is a make-or-break moment for Intel, and whatever they decide will likely have ripple effects throughout the tech industry. Everything's so interconnected these days.
Absolutely. The semiconductor market, it's like the engine of the global economy. How Intel performs, it matters, and not just for them. It's something we should all be paying attention to.
Good point. All right, let's move on to a topic that's been impossible to ignore. AI. It's everywhere you look, from cars that drive themselves to shopping suggestions that seem to read your mind. A couple of AI-related stories really caught my eye. First up, Amazon. They're experimenting with using AI, get this, to design more eco-friendly materials for their data centers. What do you make of this? Is it a genuine effort to go green or just, a PR stunt?
It's probably a little bit of both, if we're being honest. Data centers, they're notorious for using a ton of energy. And now with AI becoming, well, even more widespread, finding ways to make them more sustainable, it's critical. Amazon knows they're under a microscope when it comes to their environmental impact. So yeah, highlighting their efforts to be greener, it's a smart move from a PR standpoint for sure.
Makes sense. It's good business, but it's also, I gotta say, kind of encouraging to see a giant like Amazon put some serious money into green tech.
Yeah.
But as they say, actions speak louder than words. We'll have to see what actually comes of this, right? Not just the announcements.
I agree completely. It's all about the results in the end. What kind of impact are they actually making? That's what matters.
Exactly. Okay, another AI story, and this one involves a familiar name, Jeff Bezos. It seems he's putting his money where his mouth is, investing in Tenstorrent, an AI chip startup. And they've got some pretty ambitious goals. They want to take on the big dog, NVIDIA, which pretty much rules the AI chip world right now. Tenstorrent's already valued at $2.6 billion, with Bezos and Samsung backing them up. Do you think they have a shot at actually competing with a behemoth like NVIDIA?
It's a bit of a David and Goliath situation, isn't it? I mean, NVIDIA's got a pretty iron grip on the AI chip market, but Tenstorrent, they're not messing around. They've got big dreams and some serious financial firepower to back it up. If they're going to succeed, they're going to have to bring something truly game-changing to the table, something that sets them apart from the competition. That's a tall order.
It's a high-stakes game for sure, and I'm definitely going to be watching to see how it plays out. This kind of competition, it's what drives innovation in the AI chip world. And that impacts everything from new AI applications to how much computing power costs.
You said it. The advancements we're seeing in AI chip technology, they're driving progress in all sorts of industries. This competition, it's likely going to lead to even more innovation, even more affordable AI solutions down the road. That's the hope, at least.
It's a brave new world out there. Now let's switch gears to the world of crypto, where, as usual, Bitcoin is making headlines. One analyst, this guy Mark Palmer, is predicting Bitcoin could hit a whopping $225,000. That's a pretty wild prediction. What do you think of his reasoning, and how should investors approach these kinds of forecasts?
You got to remember, the crypto market, it's a roller coaster. Up 1 minute, down the next. And Bitcoin, its price is influenced by so many things. New regulations, how investors are feeling, even just rumors can send it soaring or plummeting. Palmer's got his reasons, but it's important to take these predictions with a grain of salt, wouldn't you say? No one's got a crystal ball. The future of Bitcoin, it's still a big question mark.
So while it's exciting to think about those massive gains, investors got to do their homework right, not just rely on predictions, even if they sound convincing.
Exactly. And don't forget about your own risk tolerance, your investment goals. Those should be your guiding stars, especially in a market as unpredictable as crypto.
Good advice. Speaking of crypto investments, MicroStrategy. They're the software company that's been making a big splash with their Bitcoin holdings. Well, they just went and bought another $1.5 billion worth. What kind of message does that send to the market, especially considering all the uncertainty around Bitcoin's future?
It shows they're all in on Bitcoin. They believe in it for the long haul. Some investors might see this as a sign that, hey, maybe Bitcoin's got legs. But you got to remember, MicroStrategy, they've got their own strategy, and it might not reflect what the broader market's thinking.
Right. It's just one company's approach.
Yeah.
Investors got to do their own due diligence, their own research before jumping on the bandwagon, right? Okay, let's take a look at what's happening in the global market. Always interesting to see what's going on out there.
Absolutely. The world's a big place. Lots going on.
Over in Brazil, their instant payment system, Pix, is making waves. Apparently, it saw a huge surge in transactions during their recent Black Friday sales. What does that tell us about digital payments globally, and how might this trend affect traditional financial institutions, like banks?
It's a clear sign that digital payments are gaining traction all over the world. People love the convenience, the speed, and this trend, it's not slowing down anytime soon, I'd say. For traditional financial institutions, it's a wake-up call. They've got to adapt, innovate, or risk getting left behind. The landscape is changing fast.
The digital revolution, it's changing everything, isn't it? All right, one more global market trend before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. We're seeing a growing global demand for U.S. corn. What's driving this surge, and what are the potential implications, for prices, trade relationships, even food security around the world?
There's a few things at play here. Supply and demand, that's a big one. Harvests in some key corn-producing regions, they've been hit by bad weather, so there's less corn to go around.
Classic case of too many mouths to feed. Not enough food to go around, right?
Yeah. And on top of that, you've got geopolitical events that are disrupting global trade. Makes countries more reliant on reliable sources like the US for essential commodities like corn.
It's a good reminder of how interconnected everything is. What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects everywhere.
Exactly. This increased demand for U.S. corn, it could lead to higher prices, which of course affects consumers, businesses, everyone really. It also underscores how important food security is and how important it is for countries to have diverse sources for their food, not just relying on one place.
It's a complex web, that's for sure. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already, and we're just getting started. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll continue to break down these stories and explore even more market trends and insights.
Welcome back. Picking up where we left off, talking about those global commodities, remember? We were discussing the rising demand for U.S. corn, right?
Yeah, that's right. Seems like such a basic thing, corn, but it's got this whole, complicated global story going on. I'm really curious about what this trend could mean for us regular folks, the consumers. Could this mean higher prices at the grocery store?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, when you've got more people wanting something than there is of it, prices tend to go up. It's basic economics. And this rise in corn prices, it could have a knock-on effect on a whole bunch of food products. Things that use corn as a main ingredient, cereals, baked goods, even meat. Because corn, it's a big part of what they feed animals.
So it's not just about the corn itself, it's about how it ripples through the whole food chain, right? Something to keep an eye on for sure, especially when you're at the checkout.
Absolutely. It really highlights how everything's connected, these global systems, and how even something that seems like a small change can have pretty big consequences.
Okay, let's shift gears back to the tech world for a minute. We were talking about how much energy AI uses, but I want to dig a little deeper into that. There's this debate, right? Is AI just inherently energy hungry, or are there ways to make it more, sustainable? What do you think?
It's a big question, especially with AI becoming such a big part of our lives. AI, especially the kind that powers things like, those large language models everyone's talking about, it takes a lot of computing power. And all that computing power, well, it needs energy.
So the more powerful, the more sophisticated the AI, the more energy it guzzles. Does that mean we're on a path to, an energy crisis fueled by AI?
Not necessarily. It's true that more complex AI models generally need more energy, but it's not always a simple equation. There are lots of smart people out there working on this, trying to optimize the algorithms, the hardware, to make AI more energy efficient.
So there's hope for a future where AI can be both powerful and, eco-friendly.
Definitely. We're already seeing some progress. For example, there are researchers developing new AI chips that are specifically designed to use less energy. And there are ongoing efforts to tweak those AI algorithms, make them less computationally demanding.
That's good to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of brain power focused on solving this problem, which gives me hope for the future of AI, honestly. Oh, before we move on, I got to ask you about this story I saw. Made me laugh, actually. Uber, the ride-sharing company. Well, they're launching a boat hailing service in Kashmir. Uber for boats. How does that even work?
It's actually pretty cool. They're doing this on Dal Lake. It's a big tourist spot in the Kashmir region of India. They have these traditional Kashmiri boats there called shikaras. They're already a common way to get around on the lake. And now Uber's basically making them even easier to access through their app.
So it's like taking a gondola ride in Venice, but with a tech twist.
Exactly. It's just a smart move by Uber if you think about it. They're using what's already there, tapping into a new market. It also shows they're not just about cars anymore. They want to be a bigger player in the whole transportation game.
Makes you wonder what they'll come up with next. Uber for hot air balloons, maybe.
Who knows? But seriously, this move by Uber also says something about how these digital platforms are reaching every corner of the world and how everything's becoming more interconnected. Technology, it's breaking down barriers and creating new opportunities in places you wouldn't expect.
It's amazing to see how technology is changing our world, sometimes in ways we never could have imagined. Speaking of changing, let's talk about retail. We just had Cyber Monday, and it feels like online retailers are always coming up with new ways to get us to buy more stuff. What trends are you seeing in the online shopping world?
One big one is using AI to make the whole shopping experience more personal. Retailers are using AI-powered chatbots now. They answer your questions, give you recommendations, even offer personalized discounts. It's like having a personal shopper in your pocket.
That's convenient, but also a little bit, Big Brother-ish. It's great to get personalized suggestions, but it also makes you think about data privacy and, the potential for AI to kind of manipulate our shopping habits.
You're right to be cautious. It's important to know how your data is being used to make sure you've got control over your privacy settings. As for the manipulation thing, I think it's all about being a savvy shopper. Be aware of your own biases and don't let those algorithms completely control your decisions.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Enjoying the convenience of technology, but also protecting our privacy and our freedom to choose.
Exactly. Being informed and making conscious choices, that's key.
Now, let's talk about something a little different. Government regulation in the tech sector. It's a hot topic these days, especially with AI becoming so powerful. How do you think governments should approach regulating these technologies that are, constantly changing and evolving?
It's a tough one. There are no easy answers. On one hand, you need some regulations to protect consumers, make sure competition is fair, and address ethical concerns. But then again, too much regulation can stifle innovation and slow down economic growth. It's tricky.
It's about finding that sweet spot,
Mm.
right, where regulations encourage responsible development but don't kill progress. But how do you find that balance?
It takes a team effort. Governments, tech companies, everyone needs to be at the table talking openly and honestly, and you got to be willing to adapt. Because things are changing so fast, regulations have to be flexible, able to respond to new challenges.
It's a challenge, but it's something we have to get right. The future of technology, well, it depends on it.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, I want to circle back to personal finance. We've covered a lot today, the Fed, AI, global commodities, even Uber for boats. But how can our listeners connect these, macro trends to their own financial decisions? What's the takeaway for them?
That's a great question. All these market trends, all these global events, they do have implications for your personal finances, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. For example, if those corn prices go up like we were talking about, that could mean your grocery bill gets bigger,
Yeah.
and that affects your budget rate.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture, understanding how these trends can trickle down and affect our everyday lives.
Exactly. Connecting the dots, seeing the patterns, that's how you make informed financial decisions.
Makes sense. Well, we've definitely covered a lot in this part, and there's still more to come. Stick with us for part 3, where we'll continue exploring these topics and dive even deeper into the world of personal finance. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. It's been a wild ride today, hasn't it? I mean, we've talked about everything from the Fed to AI, global markets, even Uber for boats in Kashmir.
Phew. Lots to unpack for sure. But yeah, it's time to bring it all home, focus on what it all means for you, the listener, the investor.
Exactly. Let's get personal. Personal finance time. With all this stuff happening, all these trends, all this global news, what are some key things our listeners should keep in mind when it comes to their own money, their own investments?
Well, first things first, never forget the power of diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as tempting as that might be. It's all about spreading your investments around. Different types of assets, different industries, different parts of the world even.
It's like that old saying, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Seems even more important now with all the uncertainty we've been talking about. It's like building a solid foundation, something that can handle whatever comes your way.
Exactly. Another important thing, stay informed. The financial world, it's constantly changing, so keep learning, follow the news, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to your money. Speaking of knowledge, what's one financial tip you'd give our listeners? Something that maybe isn't super well known but can really make a difference.
Pay close attention to fees. It's easy to overlook those little charges here and there, but whether it's fees for managing your investments, commissions for trading, even just bank account fees, they can really add up over time, and that eats into your returns.
Yeah, those hidden costs, they can sneak up on you.
For sure. Take a time to understand how fees work, what you're paying for any financial product or service. It could save you a lot of money down the road.
Good advice. Now, to end on a positive note, do you have a success story you can share with us? Maybe someone who put some of these principles into practice and really saw results.
I do, actually. I was reading about this woman who started investing when she was just in her early 20s. She didn't have a lot to invest, but she was consistent, diversified her portfolio, and she stayed disciplined even when the market was down. And now, in her early 30s, she's on track to be financially independent.
Wow, that's inspiring. A perfect example of how compound growth, combined with smart choices, can really pay off in the long run.
It shows that building wealth, it's a journey. There will be good times and bad times, but if you stay informed, make good choices, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, you can achieve your financial goals.
I love that story. Really motivating. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of finance. We hope you learned something new today.
And remember, we're here every day breaking down the latest market news. So tune in tomorrow for another deep dive. We'll keep you informed and ready to tackle whatever the financial world throws your way.
Until then, happy investing, everyone.